Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Conversations with Coaches podcast. I am your host, Kevin, and today I have the pleasure of hosting Lacey Alexander. Lacey is an executive coach, facilitator, and curriculum designer. She blends her leadership acumen with her background in adult education and development to partner with her clients to boldly define what success looks like for them, make courageous choices, and live in their purpose. I really like your choice of words there. There are a few there where I'm like, ooh, I like the way that that's kind of leads nicely into a little bit to the side of what you usually hear and more meaningful for it. So as you can probably tell, I'm excited to talk to you. Thank you for talking with me today, Lacey.
Thank you for the invite.
Of course. Let's go back to your superhero origin story, how you got your start, how you got your powers. How did you first realize you decided to become a coach? Maybe somebody told you or advised you, or you just kind of realized you were doing things in other aspects of your life where you're like, oh, this is called coaching. I have a word for it. I should do more of this. And how did you go from that kind of realization moment in your life to the practice you have today?
That's a great question. So I am a lifelong learner and constantly trying to find new ways to learn. And I just finished up my graduate program in adult education, and a mentor of mine suggested coaching. And honestly, I had no idea what that really meant. So I started a coaching program and realized in my leadership practice, I used a lot of those principles without so much of the formula and fell in love with it. But what I really fell in love with in that coaching program was to become a coach, you have to be coached. And it was life-changing for me. And that's when I instantly knew I wanted to provide that life-changing support to other people.
Yeah, that polarity realization where it's like it's such a receiving and giving coaching, it's a lot like certain life lessons you learn about giving and receiving. They're one and the same. And when you realize that, and you realize the power of it and the joy that you can derive from it, but the giving and the receiving, it really just, like, pretty much every coach I talk to in one way or another describes that moment. And it's like, you could see I could see it on your face. Like, that realization was like, it was like a dawn of a new day.
Exactly. It really was.
That's fantastic. So thinking about, I like how you described your principles without the formula, that being kind of around the beginning, like you kind of realized that you had the principles in place, the values, the type of person you were, the way you chose to go about leading and lead others, lead yourself, and how that naturally evolved very nicely into a coaching practice. So let's talk about your principles and how they connect to your formula, as it were, should you have a specific one at this point.
I do. And so what I find is 99% of my coaching clients tend to identify as women or belong to the BIPOC or LGBTQIA communities. And what I find in those demographics is that society has stifled a lot of people from being their true selves. Or, you should behave like this. I hear should so often in my coaching calls. I know I should do this, and I call that out every single time. But I like to coach professionals who are on their own leadership journeys and trying to figure out how to be their best, most authentic selves in whatever industry that they operate in. And I do that by helping them root themselves in their values, really own their strengths, and then define what success looks like to them. Because I think once you know that, it's a lot easier to shed or discern some of that unnecessary or ineffective feedback that you get that does cause a lot of that self-consciousness, or what I hear a lot of, imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. They know who they are. They just get told that they need to be less, or they're doing too much, or they're not doing these in this homogenous view of leadership. And instead of just stepping into what they are doing, then they can be their best. And so that's what I try to do, is help them through that process. And I do that through one-on-one coaching, group coaching. I facilitate courses. I do workshops. Leadership, I'm very passionate about leadership. So while I'm not developing leaders in coaching, I try to help them with that process of finding out who they want to be as a leader.
A guide at a key moment on the journey where people really need it. I love the defining success, how you define it, what it means for you, because to be perfectly frank, this is an audio only podcast, but success for a very long time in many areas has been defined by people who look a lot like me. I'm a white guy, just in case you don't know that or can't tell from the way that I'm talking. And the rules, quote unquote, the metrics for success are quite frankly, warped around that very specific kind of identity. And it's just at best irrelevant to a lot of people, and at worst damaging, very damaging to a lot of people. And I feel like the work that you do and your focus is so important for helping people to define for themselves what success looks like and what their leadership looks like, and then translating that into the world and establishing that as a present rock for other people to find later on, like people who will grow from your leadership guidance, but like many steps down the chain, like someone you coached who helped someone else, who led some other team, who moved into other position, and then someone is influenced by them, and you never get to see that. Really, you're never are directly interacting with that one-on-one, but you kind of have that trust, that knowledge that it's happening out there as you do the work. And it really is, it's very humbling to sit in, to realize that you're able to have that kind of effect and influence by just digging in and doing that kind of work with people and for people and being that kind of guide. I don't really have a question there. I really, really love what you do and what you stand for and the way you go about doing it. If that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. No, what you're describing is, I like to say, it's like being a force multiplier. And while I will never see the impact that they're having on the other side, I know, and that I've learned, is you're really good at your job and then you become in charge. And there's not a lot of guidance around that. And I've had a lot of experience in leadership, a lot of schooling, and I even taught leadership for 3 years. And so there's so much good information in that. And to me, leadership is life skills. You're not just making them better at work. They're better communicators, partners, parents. All of those things are wrapped in those same foundational principles. So in general, they're just better human beings in the world making a difference.
That's something too that I feel like, as more people are realizing about coaching, I feel like coaching has really gone through a lot in the way it's perceived and the way it's understood over the last couple of years for obvious reasons, but really over the last few decades, how for a lot of people, realizing that a coach could be really helpful in their continuing education and growth, like as a professional. Like I end up talking about this kind of a lot in this podcast lately, about how there's a continuing education aspect to coaching, where it's like we spend so much of our younger years in formal, to varying degrees, education. Like the lion's share of our time is engaged in that. And then you reach a certain point and you, for the most part, there stops being a structure of further education, a place where people can help guide you and teach you in the ways that you need when you're in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, and when you're in your first career, when you're in your next career, when you're in your midlife switch career, or wherever your journey happens to take you. There's a real gap there. And I see coaches of all various stripes moving into that gap with like power and authority and empathy and compassion in a way that clearly it excites me. I start to talk about it and I start getting carried away. My hands are starting to rise up into the Zoom window as I'm gesturing wildly. But it's very, I'm speaking to what you were just speaking to about how it's not just about the professional coaching. It's not just about developing yourself as a leader for your workplace, because that's just not the way it works. It radiates out into every aspect of your life. The way you lead and show up in your personal relationships and your family relationships, just when you're in public at the grocery store or wherever you happen to be or whatever you happen to be doing. It has this kind of, again, the second order, third order, this radiating effect that really is, hopefully, the right kind of contagious. I know that word has a little charge these days, but it's the right kind of contagion. I have a friend of mine that uses the word protagion, kind of tongue in cheek, because it's actually a very positive spreading of something that we could all use a little more of. And again, I keep not asking questions. I'm just inspired by by what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I love it, because you're right, how that spreads into their life. What I find is because of the demographic of the coachees that I generally work with, confidence comes up. I would say it's come up almost 100% of the time in their goal setting. And when they leave, I feel like they've found their voice and they're able to be their best, most authentic self in the world and in life. And it does spread across all aspects of their life.
I want to keep talking to you about this, but I realized my eyes have darted up to the clock in the Zoom window. I'm like, oh man, that was like over 10 minutes already, and we've just barely scratched the surface. I might have to like invite you back on for a part 2 or something. I'm not sure. But I do want to make sure that you get a chance to talk a little bit specifically about like what you do, who you do it for, and where people can find out more about you, connect with you, reach out and engage with you to see if your coaching will be right for them.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, what I do is I presently partner, I have my own coaching practice, but I also partner with a company in Manhattan called Sage Coaching. And they've done some amazing work in bringing coaching to mid-level managers, the director level. So prior to the C-suite, when you really need it, because you're learning how to impact how you're impacting other people's lives. So I partner with them and coach. And then also in my practice, I also partner with Rutgers University to teach leadership training to a lot of healthcare, pharmaceutical, just different places here in New Jersey. And then I teach as well in my free time leadership. I'm just really passionate about leadership and bringing that message to people.
It really, once you catch it, once you really find it like that, it permeates everything you do. It's sort of, I don't know, I don't always like this phrase, but I do like it quite a bit. It's like, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. It's like, I like this one aspect of that, because that love permeates everything that you do. But one thing I like to be able to, I have to clarify, it's like, there's still work to be done. It could be work and love at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive states, but I do like flipping that on its head a little bit, because that's really what it's like. It becomes a part of everything you do. It becomes a part of the way you want to move through the world, whether you're at your job or you're at your coaching practice or anywhere in your life.
Yes, but you're right. It's still a lot of work. Being an entrepreneur and going alone is a lot of work.
Yes, I do. That's why I always put that caveat in there, because I'm like, I've bumped into it plenty of times myself. It is a ton of work, and it's a lot of love and a lot of passion and a lot of light and a lot of joy. So it's both and.
Yes, it is.
Where these days, where do you most like for people to find out more about you and like get to know you a little bit? Do you have a particular, like, do you have a website that you'd like to direct people to? Do you have a preferred social media like account or a preferred place that you like to really like engage and maybe start a conversation? Where can people find out more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, more people can find me at www.creativesolutions, the letter A, the number 2, the letter Z.com. And I have a bigger presence on LinkedIn, but actually by the end of the year, I'm launching a learning platform congruently with a YouTube channel where I want to talk about some of these leadership principles. I'll talk about what the stages of team dynamics are. And then if people want to learn more, they can go to my learning platform and learn some of the nuances of how you guide your teams through those different stages to help them be the most successful that they can be. So that is coming.
Coming soon. You say the end of the year, and it's like it's mid-October already, so that's right around the corner. I may have to ask you back on so you can promote that and talk more about that. That's exciting. That's really exciting.
It is exciting.
Well, shoot, I should let you go. Is there any? I like to ask this sometimes. Is there any like message you want to like just deliver to the audience, or anything you'd like to say that kind of sums up what you stand? You've already basically said it all, but I always like to leave a little bit of a door open if you have anything that you'd like to leave the audience with before we close out.
Yeah, one thing I'm really passionate about is doing that intentional self-work to really figure out who you are and being rooted in that, because it does help you to walk in your purpose. It does help you to turn away some of that unnecessary noise that makes us second guess what we're doing when it's right, and just enjoy life a whole lot more because you walk with a different confidence. So I'm very passionate about knowing who you are, knowing what you stand for, and being able to walk in your purpose.
I love that phrase, walk in your purpose. It's a perfect place to leave it. I think that might be the title of the episode, quite frankly. Lacey, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me for the podcast. I really enjoyed talking with you. And audience, those of you listening, by all means, find out more about Lacey, reach out. She is doing the good work, capital G, insofar as that's something. It is the good work. And there's a reason that we're in these conversations so passionate, because it really is a work of change. So thank you, Lacey, very much for being with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
And to the audience, we'll talk to you again soon.